The Kleins must feel like they're trapped in some recurring nightmare, you know, like the one in the movie Groundhog Day. They finally get their case before the Supreme Court of the United States, only to have it sent back to be heard again by the Court of Appeals of Oregon. Now, the legal questions before the court seem pretty simple enough, but the underlying question for all of us is, can government force you to create something against your will or against your conscience? We'll discuss this next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Well, hello once again. This is Paul Engel with the Constitution Study, where we read and we study the Constitution and we teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me. As always, head to the website constitutionstudy.com to find out all things about what we're doing here at the Constitution Study and to join in the discussion. Now, if you notice you'll see a calendar of events where I'm going to be. If you're in the area, stop by, say hello. If you'd like me to come speak at one of your events, under the events tab, there's a request a speaker, and we'll see what we can work out. I've had several people ask recently if I could speak at their events, and we're setting some things up that might be interesting. As always, ask questions. I love questions. I have other questions to answer that I'll be doing here in the next couple of episodes, and I hope you enjoy those. Most of all, I want to thank everybody that helped share what we're doing here. Whether you're sharing the videos, whether you're sharing the articles, whether you're just talking about what you've learned here, please continue to do that. That's an important part of what we're doing here. Hopefully soon there'll be an opportunity on the website to support even more of the work that we're doing here. I've got a couple things in motion. We'll see how things are going. With that, let's get into the Klein case. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the case or just need a quick refresher, let me quote from the petition to the Supreme Court. Melissa and Aaron Klein owned a bakery, which they operated in accord with their religious convictions. They designed and created custom cakes, only custom cakes, and they did so without regard to the sexual orientation of their customers, including the complainants in this case who had commissioned a wedding cake from the Kleins for a traditional wedding just 2 years before setting this litigation in motion. What the Kleins could not do in good conscience was to design and create a custom wedding cake to celebrate a wedding ceremony that contravened their religious belief that marriage is a union of one man and one woman. When the Kleins declined to contribute their art to a same-sex wedding ritual, the Oregon Bureau of Labor and Industry, abbreviated BOLI, found that they had violated Oregon's public accommodation law. BOLI ordered the Kleins to pay the complainants $135,000 in damages. Sweet Cakes by Melissa went out of business. The Oregon Court of Appeals affirmed BOLI's order, rejecting the Kleins' constitutional defense. The Oregon Supreme Court denied review. See, according to the Kleins' petition, they served anyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, including this exact couple, the ones that filed this complaint against them. They had served them before. See, while they would serve anyone, their conscience would not allow them to make just any cake. Among those cakes that the Kleins declined to make are same-sex wedding cakes. For this, they were fined $135,000 by the state of Oregon and put out of business. So the first question put before the court, and the one I want to deal with today, is this: whether Oregon violated the free speech and free exercise clauses of the First Amendment by compelling the Kleins to design and create a custom wedding cake to celebrate a same-sex wedding ritual in violation of their sincerely held religious beliefs. Now, if you've been following the Constitution Study for a while, you may see where I'm going, but let's start at the beginning. This is obviously a violation of both the Kleins' free speech and free exercise of religion rights. Not a question. It is not, however, a violation of their First Amendment rights. That's right. It is a violation of their rights of freedom of religious opinion in Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution of the state of Oregon. Now, you may be saying, Paul, if it's a violation of their free speech, how can it not be a violation of their First Amendment? The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. You see, the First Amendment specifically says Congress shall make no law. Since the Kleins were not charged with violating a federal law, it is not one that Congress passed. And since Congress did not pass a law that violated the Kleins' rights, at least not in this case, There is no First Amendment violation. However, the Oregon Constitution reads, freedom of religious opinion. No law shall in any case whatever control the free exercise and enjoyment of religious opinions or interfere with the rights of conscience. The state of Oregon not only protects their citizens' right to freely exercise their religion, but also specifically their rights of conscience. See, by punishing the Kleins for not acting in a way that violates their conscience, both the Oregon legislative and judicial branches have violated the Constitution of their state, which they swore to uphold. Now, since the rights of the Kleins have repeatedly been violated by both the legislature and the judiciary of the state of Oregon, there are three possible solutions. Solution number one, remove the judges. Reading from the Oregon Constitution, in the manner provided by law, and notwithstanding Section 1 of this article, a judge of any court may be removed or suspended from his judicial office by the Supreme Court or censured by the Supreme Court for, among other things, willful misconduct in a judicial office where such misconduct bears a demonstrable relationship to the effective performance of judicial duties. That is Article 7, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution. I believe it's demonstrable that by willfully ignoring both the Constitution of the state of Oregon and their oath to support it, the misconduct of these judges that have heard these cases is not only demonstrable, but has impacted their duties as officers of the court. Since the Supreme Court of Oregon did not accept the case, they should be free to censure the judges in the Court of Appeals without any conflict of interest. Solution number two, elections have consequences. See, not only are the legislatures and the governor who signed this atrocious bill elected by the people, but the justices of the Supreme Court as well. That means the citizens of the state of Oregon can censure the judges that refuse to get justice for the Kleins by refusing to re-elect them. If the citizens of Oregon, like most of those in the other states, pay little if any attention to the election and appointment of judges, it's their own fault when one of their own can't get justice from the branch whose sole purpose is to ensure it. And speaking of legislators, do the citizens of Oregon really believe the state has the authority to force them to work for others? Oh, sure, you may not bake cakes, but can you be forced against your will to fix a car, take a plumbing or construction job, or do any other than myriad tasks we do every day? I know most Americans just want people to be treated fairly. But are you willing to give up your freedom and pursuit of happiness in order to allow others to decide what should and should not be allowed? If the citizens of Oregon think the Bureau of Labor and Industries went too far, it's up to them to hire representatives that will rein them in. Third option, of course, is the 14th Amendment. See, while what Boley did was not a violation of the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, a case could be made that Oregon has violated the 14th Amendment, which reads, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, if we think for a minute, the state of Oregon has made and enforced a law that abridged the immunities of a citizen of the United States. See, conscience rights protected by their own Constitution have been violated. The courts have allowed property, both money and their business, to be taken from the Kleins with a process that was not due, since it did not protect the rights of the Kleins. In addition, I believe both the Boley and the Oregon courts have denied the equal protection of laws to the Kleins, since any protection against discriminatory practices has been applied to only one side of this case. No thought seemed to be given to the discrimination against the Kleins for their religious beliefs and conscience. Neither was the discriminatory acts of the couple that filed the complaint against the Kleins considered. They were not forced to buy their cakes only from the Kleins. They were perfectly free to take their request and all of their business elsewhere. Rather, in what appears to be an attempt to suppress a belief they disagree with, this couple has used the state of Oregon to discriminate against a viewpoint, speech, and religious activity with which they disagree. In other words, they have weaponized the state of Oregon to discriminate against those they disagree with. So yes, what has been happening to the Kleins is a travesty of justice. There's no other way to put it. Not only have their lives and livelihood been destroyed, but the very concept of justice and equal protection have been all but trampled. While I feel for the plight of the Kleins, and I want them to get justice, I believe taking this to the Supreme Court under the pretense of the First Amendment does more harm than good in the long run. Should this case come back to the federal courts, any decision would set a dangerous precedent. The federal courts rule not only over the state courts, but over the states themselves. The precedent that the Constitution doesn't mean what it already says has a long history in federal courts. See, I urge the citizens of the state of Oregon to retake control of their government and seek justice, not only for the Kleins, but for themselves as well. So what do you think? Have you been following this case, and is this a slightly different spin on it? I mean, I agree it's a violation of the freedom of speech and freedom of conscience, but that's a state issue. And if you live in Oregon, what do you think about your government that so blatantly disregards the rights of a pair of its citizens? Not only disregards them, but literally attacks them for having a conscience. Whenever a state or a state entity decides it knows what you should do and it's going to force you to do something, it is a violation of the basic concept of liberty. I'll put a link in the description of a podcast I did on that particular topic. But it's not a First Amendment violation. This should not have gone to the federal courts except as a violation of the 14th Amendment, because the rights and privileges and immunities of a citizen of the United States have not been protected by a particular state. That was the purpose of the 14th Amendment in the first place, to make sure states that were once slave states protected the rights of slaves. I should say former slaves. Are we going to let states infringe on the rights of citizens because a group is vocal? It's up to you. If you live in Oregon, maybe it's time for you to step up and start looking at your representatives and get them to do their job. If you don't live in Oregon, maybe it's time we look at our own states. I live here in Tennessee and I talk with my representatives regularly. Do you talk to your representatives in the state legislature? Are you sure they are protecting your rights? And are you sure they are overseeing the judicial branch to make sure that they don't violate your rights? And if not, what's going to happen when it's not a bakery and same-sex cakes, but it's when the government comes after something you believe in? See, if we're not willing to protect the rights of others, who will be there to protect our rights? So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it made you think. Most of all, I hope it made you think a little differently. We tend to jump on these First Amendment cases, not think them all the way through. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Where do you see First Amendment cases that really aren't First Amendment cases? Or tell me how you're interacting with your state representative as far as protecting the rights of other citizens in your state. Most of all, take this, share the video, share the article that's linked to this. If you're getting the audio podcast, share that as well. This continues to be an audio podcast. It is the understanding of the true meaning of the law and of the Constitution that will help us remain a free nation. Most of all, I hope to see you again the next time when we get together here at the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday American.